Hello, welcome back to Power Tongue. My name is Brady. So happy you could join me today, but this is actually going to be a bit of a longer episode because I really want to explain some perspectives on aliens and extraterrestrial life and all these really fun topics, but also when you talk about them, people act like you're completely insane. There are perspectives offered in the raw material or the Law of One, and this is material that I reference quite often on this channel because it really spoke to me the first time I worked through it, and since then I've gleaned so much comfort from understanding this material. So I'm going to talk about all this UFO disclosure talk from the perspective of the Law of One. So you don't need to believe me. You don't need to think I'm like trying to teach you this as gospel truth or whatever. This is just my interpretation of what's going on. And we know that lately there's been a lot of talk about alien disclosure. There was UFO hearings just a few days ago where ex-military and government individuals testified that the United States government is aware of and even in possession of alien technology, and that they've actually touched and held alien bodies and all that stuff. But the problem is, and this is my problem with it, the more you turn towards a physical and logical intergalactic conversation on aliens and UFOs, you're missing the real deal. You're missing the mark. You're missing the psycho-spiritual side of what's going on in this reality. There's real contact being made from entities in other dimensions of consciousness and other densities, and that's being misconstrued to be the little green men from other planets and such like that. It's almost like a counterfeit of the real deal is to tell you, yes, there's been alien spacecraft, yes, there's been contact made, it's been from physical beings from other planets, when in reality, contact is something that we're all capable of within our consciousness from interdimensional beings that are trying to make contact with us and help steer our evolutionary progress or help hinder it. There are negative entities. We're going to get into all this, but it's going to be a lot to wrap your head around, and I'm going to sound like a complete crazy person, but once you get this, you get this. And I always say, like, the Law of One finds you when you're ready for it, and boy, was I ready for it when I dug into it. So, get a coffee, chill, relax. This isn't like a fast video. There's not a lot of editing. I just want to tell you straight up what the Law of One says, what Ra says about alien contact. If you're not familiar with the Law of One, it's a series of channeled teachings from Ra, who is a collective consciousness, or as they describe themselves, a social memory complex, which is a state that you can achieve once you what's the word I'm looking for? Evolve into that level of consciousness. And Ra said that extraterrestrials aren't just beings from far off planets, they're actually advanced spiritual entities that are connected to Earth's evolution. See, we're in a 75,000 year cycle, and we're in the third leg of that, and each leg is 25,000 years. And at the end of this cycle, there's something called a harvest. And if we're successful, if 51% of the population has aligned with positive service to others' actions, then we will evolve into the fourth density. Now, it gets kind of complicated. There are individuals here who are in the fourth density now. But in order for the entire planet to shift into that density with them, there needs to be a 51% threshold. And then the cycle begins again. So Ra says that there's this confederation of planets, a group of benevolent or positive individuals, entities, whatever, who have chosen to guide humanity. They're on the sidelines. They won't interfere directly, but their goal is to actually assist us in our spiritual awakening while simultaneously respecting our free will. That is extremely, extremely important to this organization, the Galactic Confederation of Planets. And they answer to the Council of Saturn, which is like an overseeing organization that is watching us and waiting for us to give us the okay to evolve. But we're not going to get too deep into the Council of Saturn in this video, because that's a big topic that needs to be by itself. But this Confederation of Planets, they are a group of positively oriented civilizations that are committed to aiding planetary populations with their spiritual development. So they're a support organization or a watchdog organization that very rarely gets involved in order to promote our free will, but they do offer assistance when they're explicitly asked. When you request assistance from them, they will subtly work to help your growth in consciousness. And so in this confederation, there's individuals from various different densities, including Ra, from the Ra material, who's a 6th density social memory complex. They often work through channeling, dreams, inspiration, and that's a means of making contact without like the physical UFO flying above and making a big deal. And Ra speaks to this, like that's why they don't arrive physically most of the time. They arrive through thought form. They arrive through within your consciousness. But they have visited in physical form. And when they do, everybody goes crazy. Everybody tries to like worship them and hold them up as a deity. And in doing so, interrupts our free will and takes away our fixation on the one infinite creator that is flowing through all of us, that is working through all of us. So we've got this positive group, the Confederation of Planets, and then we've got a negative group on the flip side called the Orion Group. They're a negatively oriented faction of entities that oppose the work of the Confederation and other positive groups like that. They're actively trying to stop the good work that the Confederation is doing. And they want to maintain control over the lower density beings. So they manipulate the truth. They distort things, cause distortions, and we talk about all these distortions within our reality. Things that shouldn't be, but they are. That's the result of the Orion Group. And they exercise control. And they may control certain world governments. And anything to cause war and strife. Anything that takes us away from loving others. Everybody and every entity, including the extraterrestrials, falls into 2 camps. There's service to others. Beings that want to uplift. Beings that want to love, like the Confederation, and their service to self entities. They seek to control and manipulate, like the Orion Group. So the difference is in your intentions. While positive beings guide us subtly, negative entities thrive on fear and division. They create chaos. Now, it's important to note that there is a place for these negatively oriented individuals. If you feel like you're a service to self individual, you need to own that reality. It's the only way forward for you. Maybe you'll never achieve the higher densities of consciousness, but that's okay if that's who you are. You need to be true to yourself. Do you want inherently to serve others? Or are you inherently predisposed to serving yourself? That's the reality of this world we live in. There's all sorts of typologies of this light versus dark, like in Star Wars, the Force versus the dark side, or good versus evil. In the Bible, like the God versus the devil. There's all these different archetypes within this consciousness that we're currently living through that represent the main things, the service to others or service to self. So these beings make contact. There's all different ways they do this. There's like, have you ever received a download type thing? It's like some sort of telepathic frequency that just tunes into you and tells you something, gives you some type of information. And there's lots of ways that these downloads can occur, but when they occur, it's really something, because it's just not something that you could make up off the top of your head. It's clearly a download from another source, or from the source, if you know what I'm talking about. There's synchronicities. We always run into synchronicities in our life, like constantly seeing the same numbers, constantly seeing the same things, deja vu, things like this. These are synchronicities. They're messages from the universe that magic is happening all around you. And there are fleeting UFO sightings. Sometimes these beings have made contact. Like in the raw material, Ra said they made contact in ancient Egypt, and it didn't go well, because as soon as they make contact, they're immediately upheld as deities, and that cannot happen. You cannot be seen like that if you're trying to instill positive change, because that's service to self. And obviously members of the Confederation can't be aligned with service to self behavior. And so none of these entities can disrupt our free will. That would inhibit our evolutionary progress. So there's a lot of organizations that are working in this cosmological journey we're on. And I want to speak to that a little bit. But it gets a little weird. But like the main high being of reality is this one infinite creator. Like I like to call him the source. It's like in Christianity, Yahweh. He's the one source of all things, and he flows through all of us, as we are all an expression of their consciousness. I do have a habit of gendering this source as a he, because I grew up in a Christian background, but I'm really trying to work on that, because obviously it's a non-binary source. It's not something that fits into the bracket of one gender, obviously. We have this way of like anthropomorphizing God into being just like us, like some bearded man in the sky, and it's a shame to put him in a little small box like that when they are so much more. They are so much more than like a human thought form, like we make it. So the infinite creator is like the origin of all existence. And in our reality, the creator is experiencing itself through infinite manifestations, which is where we come in. There's densities, councils, entities, all described in the Law of One, and they're all aspects of this one creator's consciousness. So that we all exist within the infinite creator, and we all return to the infinite creator. It's a giant loop. Nothing is separate. Like, this is what I'm always trying to say, and it sounds just like this woo-woo, like weird thing to say, but nothing is separate. You are not your own person. You have an individualization that needs to be found through self-actualization, but that individualization is an aspect of that one creator's consciousness. And why bother having an individualization? Because you need to have the free will to make the choice to experience yourself. You need to have the free will to choose service to others. And if you do, you will return to the creator. You will move up these higher densities of consciousness and become all these incredible thought forms and groups. And the things you're going to see are so crazy. It's going to be a wild ride. So the next tier down from the infinite creator, kind of on this hierarchy, so we have like infinite creator, and then we have these logos and sub-logoi that Don was talking with Ra in the raw material, because it's kind of a hard idea to wrap your head around. But these logos or logoi are creators of cosmic structures. And I've dealt with this a lot in my work with like connecting the law of one to Christian theology, because logos is obviously a big item in Christianity. We had, like, in the beginning was the word logos, and the logos was God, and the logos was with God. Logos is just translated to English, and they just put the word there, like in the beginning was the word. But there's another translation of the word logos that I think would fit much better in the Christian Bible, but for obvious reasons, translations are very structured, and there's a lot of rules to abide by in order to, keep the control structure the way it is, and, keep the church in a position of authority over its congregants so as to take money from them and control their thoughts and deeds. And there's a lot of issues with the church I'm going to talk about sometime, but I still have too much trauma to even get into it. But so if we do this translation of logos and call it a concentration of consciousness, think about that Bible verse, like, in the beginning was a concentration of consciousness, and that concentration of consciousness was God, and that concentration of consciousness was with God. So when we look to this tier in this hierarchy of governments within this cosmic excellence that we're looking at, we have logos and sub-logos. Logoi is the plural of logos. I'm just going to say sub-logos, whatever. Ignore me rambling on. It makes for weird video structure. But anyway, the logos is a creative force that designs and governs entire galaxies. They're like artists that are designing the stars. Like, you look up and, be honest, you're blown away. Like on a starry night, if you're out of town or whatever, there's no lights around you. Where I live is completely rural, no lights whatsoever. I can go outside and look up, and it's like, oh shit, this is crazy. It's crazy to see what's going on here. That's the work of the logos. Now, the logos is an aspect of the one infinite creator, but this is a separated aspect of his consciousness that designs and governs the galaxies. And then we have the sub-logos. They're subsidiary creators. They create the stars and the planets and the planetary systems, and they manifest the laws and patterns of the logos within their realms. The one infinite creator, the source, the God, whatever it is, it delegates. It delegates tasks. It's not like, I'm the creator, I'm going to create all this now. Like, I'm going to create this universe, then I'm going to create these galaxies, and these celestial splatters, and, quantum wormholes, and all these layers and patterns. No, that is the role of the logos. An example of this is our sun. Don asked for an example in the Law of One, and Ra said, your sun. The sun is a sub-logos responsible for the spiritual evolution of the solar system. The sun is governing the solar system's evolution. Because, spoiler alert, we'll get to this later, planets evolve too. Planets have a way of being involved in this evolutionary process as well. It gets so deep. So under the infinite creator, under the logos and sub-logoi, we have the Council of Saturn I was just telling you about. They're like delegated to govern the entire solar system, our solar system. I'm not speaking to other areas within the cosmos, because we didn't ask Ra about that. We're not aware about that. But even Ra is probably not aware about that. That's the thing. Ra is not like this being that knows everything and is like just telling us all these answers. No, Ra only knows so much. But the Council of Saturn oversees the spiritual evolution of all beings in the solar system. They act as a gatekeeper for entities that are wishing to advance to higher densities. You will not advance to a higher density without the blessing or permission or whatever of the Council of Saturn. And they adjudicate decisions about interdimensional interventions, ensuring respect for free will. If you're an entity and you want to make contact on Earth to us, which some have apparently, you need the blessing and permission of the Council of Saturn. And they decide if it's worth pursuing in respect to our free will. So the Council of Saturn is all like the highest levels of consciousness, like 6th density and 7th density beings, some physical and some metaphysical. And they're the highest authority in the solar system's governance. Now, just to let you know, this is like on a little tangent. There are 8 densities of consciousness, but it's like if you play piano, there's a scale. And once you get up to the 8th density of consciousness, it's completely back to square one. Like, you know how the musical scales like G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Again, G is the same as G. It's just an octave higher. Well, there's different octaves of consciousness as well. And so once you get to the 8th density within an octave, you shift up an octave, and you're back to the first level of consciousness. It's amazing how this is all created and set up. And it's like people just don't get this, and people fall into these like religious systems and worldly explanations of things, and it's so dull, and it's like you'll die one day and then it's over, there's nothing else. Well, this is an alternative to that offers hope that you might not get it all right in this life, you might mess up, you might not achieve your destiny, but there's still a chance. And I think this is what, not to bring it back to Christianity, but I've studied the Bible a lot, especially like early Jewish literature. I think this is what the Bible is getting to. Like, everybody talks about the Passover, and the Passover is this important institution within Jewish culture where Jews need to observe this in respect to the protection of God and the deliverance from Egypt and all of that. But have you ever heard of a second Passover? Sometime after the first Passover, there's a second Passover. And the God has instituted this for people that missed the first Passover. There's a second chance. There's more. You don't need to get it right the first time. You're not perfect. You're not the source. You're not the God. Anyway, I'm completely rambling. I don't even know how I got there, but I just want to say that there's no pressure. Like, this is not like some thing like Christianity can sometimes say you need to get this right or you're going to burn in hell for eternity and be tortured and tormented with no possibility of redemption. Is that what you want? Do you want to burn forever? That sounds, I'm going to be honest with you, psychotic, like completely psychotic. Like the man, I say man because obviously it's a man that wrote that. It's completely backwards to the reality of things. The reality of things is we're here to be this God experiencing himself. God doesn't send himself to hell. Not that we're God, but it's like God is us. God is in us, through us. It's like the Force in Star Wars. I gotta stop saying that because this just sounds completely dumb. So under this Council of Saturn, you have the Confederation of Planets I was talking about earlier. The Confederation of Planets in service to the Infinite Creator. They're a subgroup underneath the Council of Saturn that's a collective of positive service to other civilizations. And they're the ones that really provide the guidance, the advice, they're the ones that really intervene when you call out to them. And when you call out to them, it's not like you're like, oh, Council or oh, Confederation of Planets, I need you, help me. No, it can be like just a desperation in your consciousness for answers, a seeking, a thinking, like just an echo of your being calls out to them, and they can respond if they have the permission of the council. They can certainly respond to you. And the Confederation of Planets loves to assist. They want you to evolve, because if you evolve, they evolve. evolution is like a collective thing. But the Confederation communicates through non-intrusive means. They might communicate to you in a dream. They might inspire you. They might come via channeling, like the Raw material, the Seth material, the Course in Miracles material. There's all these different, and a lot of people on YouTube and all these social media sites. There's a lot of channel work being done, and I think that is indicative of what's happening right now within our universe. There is a major shift coming. We're moving into a new age. We're moving into a new consciousness altogether. And we're really in the last day. Like, no, I can't even say that with a straight face, but Christians are always saying this, like, we're in the last days. This is the last days. We are in the last days, but it's not like the last days before hellfire rains on the earth and destroys everything you love and kills everyone. And it's like raptures half your family, leaves you alone to die and go through the tribulation. No, it's like the last days of the age, because the whole cosmological structure, the whole reality that we're aware of is completely shifting and evolving into a new age. And the harvest is coming. And when harvest comes, we move collectively from this third density consciousness, which is like our awareness of ourselves, to fourth density. Wisdom and love. We're headed towards beautiful, beautiful things. But you need to have an optimistic or positive interpretation of these religious ideas, because there's truth in everything. And all these different religious structures are telling the same story. But they all condemn and think the other ones are going to hell for eternity or whatever. When in reality, they're all telling the exact same story. The law of one. They're all telling the law of one. Everything points back to the law of one. And there's a battle going on right now, and Christians always say there's a spiritual battle. There is absolutely a spiritual battle, and if you can peer into it through meditation and all these different techniques, the Confederation of Planets is at war with the Orion Group, because the Orion Group is infiltrating our society and trying to bring us down by making 51% of the population service to self. And we are aware we live in a very selfish time. Selfie. This is the selfie generation. Not that there's anything wrong with taking selfies, but it's just we're very self-centered. But I have to say, these new generations coming up now, it's like a complete paradigm shift. Like, they're activists. They're standing up for the marginalized in society. They're acting in complete service to others' behavior, which is possibly spearheading this shift and transition to evolutionary consciousness. It's insane what's happening right now in the spirit. And if you have eyes to see it or ears to hear it, how can you not be blown away? So, and under these beings from the 4th, 5th, and 6th densities in the Confederation of Planets, we have the Guardians. The Guardians are a really cool group. They work for the Council of Saturn. They're a subgroup of the Council of Saturn. And they're protectors of cosmic balance. They're the ones that actually enforce the law of free will is upheld. They are the ones that enforce that processes are non-unduly disrupted, and they oversee significant events like planetary transitions and harvests. Like, I don't know if you ever watched any of the Marvel stuff, but the Marvel stuff is in some ways like a direct replica of the real cosmological structure that we're in. But there's the TVA, the Time Variance Authority. They're kind of like the Guardians. Like, they step in when things are going awry to actually mess up the timeline, because we are on a timeline unfolding, even though everything has actually happened right now in this concentration of consciousness. There is a timeline unfolding in the material realm. And the Guardians, they're like a sick group of people. They're 7th density beings, like the highest density possible before you move up an octave back to the first level of consciousness. They're near the end of their evolutionary journey. So imagine the wisdom, imagine the insight, imagine hearing words from the Guardians. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. I get drunk off this stuff, so don't mind me. Underneath the Guardians, we have social memory complex. They're collective consciousness groups. They're beings who have unified their individual consciousnesses with a density operating as a single entity with a vast shared knowledge. And they're advisors and guides. They may be your spirit guides, but they'll give you a word that you can take to heart and turn your life around in some cases. Like in the Law of One material, Ra is a 6th density social memory complex. And I got a whole video, some notes wrote out for a video on social memory complexes because we're headed there once we get up a couple more densities. But social memory complexes are super cool. Like, we no longer have the need for a physical body. We exist only in consciousness. And all these different individualizations achieve a state of unity where we know each other's thoughts and we can communicate telepathically and we can do things by thought. Like Ross said, they created one of the Great Pyramids by thought. Because the physical, when you're in a social memory complex, the physical doesn't have any laws. The physical is nothing to you because you've transcended that. And underneath these social memory complexes, there's wanderers. Wanderers are volunteers from higher densities that choose selflessly to incarnate within a lower density. And when they do that, they assist in raising planetary vibrations, assisting in tuning our frequency to a more positive note. And they operate within the limitations of human existence, which is the crappy part. But they carry on an intrinsic connection to higher density origins. So this is like, there are people walking around our Earth right now that are wanderers. They may have previously been in the 4th, 5th, or 6th density of consciousness, and when it came time for them to reincarnate, they chose to return to Earth as a 3rd density human. So they sacrificed their telepathic abilities, they sacrificed their bodiless complex, they sacrificed all these incredible powers and things they were able to do and enjoy to come back and selflessly volunteer on Earth to help raise the vibration. And the thing is, there's this veil of forgetting placed over people so they're not born like knowing they're a wanderer. They discover it through self-actualization later on in life, possibly. However, they are often people that are told like you're an old soul, or they may have a lot of spiritual wisdom, or strangely enough, a high sex drive is an indicator of being a wanderer. There's all these different things that show that you're spiritually evolved, you're operating at a higher vibration than normal, and in doing so, you can help assist us and get us ready for the harvest. So we thank you for that. Underneath the Wanderers, there's the Orion group. They're the negative counterpart to the Confederation. They represent this polarity of service to self. They control and manipulate the lower densities. And they create fear. They create separation, self-serving behavior, the opposite of the Law of One. They try to eliminate unity from the equation. And then we have local planetary entities, and they're the smallest organization mentioned in the Law of One, but still a massive one. These are individual planetary consciousnesses. The planet itself has consciousness. Earth, that we're standing on right now, has a consciousness. Each planet has its own spirit or logos that governs the development of life and consciousness within its sphere. They evolve themselves on a separate frequency than us humans, and they interact with the planet, with the Council of Saturn and the Confederation. And it's very interesting to think about the evolutionary journey that Earth is on, because look at its journey thus far. Like, there's been these times when the whole Earth is like covered in ash and fire, and then it's covered in ice and water, and all these different periods the Earth has gone through. Like, those have obviously been manifestations of the Earth's inner spirit. And this is getting to be some woo-woo stuff. But the whole point of this video, I know I just spent a long time just going through these different tiers of governing structures within the Law of One, but I think that's really important to note, kind of before going through Law of One material individually. All these groups that are involved in what's happening here, there's so much more beyond the physical. Just know that not all contact from extraterrestrials is benevolent. There are negative entities. There are entities aligned with service to self. There are those looking to bring you down. You need to discern appropriately. So know that when we go into times of these big reveals and press conferences about alien contact and the like, know that it's not about waiting for this big reveal. It's not about this service to self, desire to know more than everybody else. It's about choosing love and unity and spiritually opening your heart to these entities that are trying to steer you towards the positive polarity, the service to others polarity. We need to walk in unity. We need to return to this unified state that the Law of One promises we're headed towards. And in doing so, there are so many powerful and beautiful things to come. Anyway, I hope this hasn't been too boring for you, and if you made it this far, you are so incredible. I love you. Goodbye.